Oh, howdy. Here we are again with our class on illuminating the intention, the famous text by Lama Khapa. And we're going to begin with just a couple of prayers, which Sunny is going to put up. So remember, as we said before, when you can spend some time in meditation saying these prayers and meditating on the meaning. For instance, the first line here in taking refuge and generating bodhicitta is I go for refuge. The first couple of words, I go for refuge. Remember what that means. Refuge is a sense of protection. You go for refuge when you have some fear or trepidation about life, sufferings. You seek some kind of support. And so you need to have, in order to take refuge, you need to have fear of cyclic existence, or at least fear of the lower realms. That's considered to be the minimum kind of taking of refuge. And you need to have faith in the objects of refuge, what we call the triple gem, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Here it says, I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly, which in this case means the Mahayana Arya Sangha. It doesn't necessarily mean monks and nuns. It means anyone who has realized emptiness directly. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. Through the collections I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit migrators. Actually, the Tibetan says, Jola Pencher, in order to benefit migrators. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. Through the collections I create through listening the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit migrators, migrating beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. Through the collections I create through listening to the Dharma in this coming session of the class, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all migrating beings. And then short mandala. By offering this ground, anointed with perfume and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and moon, visualized as a Buddha realm, may all migrators enjoy a pure realm. So this doesn't mean that you anoint your ground in your room with perfume or strew flowers around. It means that you imagine the world system, and that upon which you abide, the ground. You imagine that as, smooth and anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, and so forth. And then you have to go down a little bit. There you go. There we go. O holy and perfect pure Lama, from the clouds of compassion that form in the skies of your Dharmakaya wisdom. You could be thinking of the omniscient mind here, your primordial guru, the Dharmakaya. O holy and perfect Lama, from the clouds of compassion that form in the skies of your Dharmakaya wisdom, please send down a rain of vast and profound Dharma. The vast means the method side, the profound means the wisdom side, precisely in accordance with the needs of we, your disciples, who are to be trained. Idam Guru Radna Mandalakam Niyatayam Hi. Okay. So we're going to begin again with little quieting meditation, stabilizing meditation, try to set motivation. So sit comfortably. Relax your mind. Remind yourself you don't have to think about anything else. And pay attention to your breathing. Well, maybe begin. Pay attention to your heartbeat. It's difficult, but you watch a while, you can see. Recognize that you don't have to do anything to watch the heartbeat. That is, you don't have to cause your heart to beat, right? It's beating anyway. Now pay attention to your breathing in the same way, in the sense that you're not controlling the breathing. It's very comfortably relaxed. Watch the natural flow of your breathing. Recognize when you're breathing in, when you're breathing out. And let go of all other thoughts. Just keep in mind, once you've recognized the breathing, keep it in your mindfulness as an object of mindfulness. If there are other thoughts coming, try to squeeze your attention on paying attention to the breathing. That doesn't mean you squeeze your body. It just means tightening up your awareness of that, letting the other thoughts go. Once you've reached a little relaxed state, quieting of the mind, follow a breath up as though it's going up your nostrils to the crown of your head, down paralleling the central channel down to the area of your heart chakra. And just leave your attention there and watch your mental consciousness. Because the consciousness is something subtle, not an object of sight or hearing or smell or taste or tactile sensation, you have to infer its existence by watching the presence of the thoughts in your mind, the feelings, inner conversations, judgments. Recognizing that they arise in your mind, sometimes stay for a while, sometimes stay a long time. If you're in a bad mood, that might be present for some time. But they are not of the nature of your mind. They can come and go. They arise in what's called the conventional clear light nature of your mind, which we try to get a mental image of. The mere lack of obstruction to the entry or disappearance of mental phenomena to the nature of your mind. It's not something that has a color. It's not like the blueness of space or the blackness of the night sky. It's an understanding to your wisdom focusing on just that aspect of the mind, that it doesn't hinder the entry of mental phenomena, thoughts in others, nor to their disappearance. In a sense, it's like space, which is the lack of obstructing contact. But here in the mind, where there are no forms that can obstruct you, it refers to the arising or disappearing of phenomena to your mental consciousness. This is called the developmental Buddha nature, as opposed to the ultimate Buddha nature, which is the emptiness of the mind. This is just the conventional clear light nature of the mind. It's called the developmental Buddha nature because recognizing it, one realizes that one can develop all of the good qualities. Eliminate all the faults. And the fact that we can meditate on this now is due to the fact that we have a life, this, it's called auspicious moment, that the Tibetans chose to call a life of leisure and endowment. When the Buddha talked about this auspicious moment, he mentioned that's because we have this short moment, maybe 50 years, 60 years, 80 years, 100 years, or shorter or longer. When we have clarity of mind, when we have a human life, we're free from the sufferings of the lower realms that can prevent us from pursuing the path. We have all of the equipment we need. We don't need $100,000 in the bank. We don't need a condo. We don't need a huge number of friends in order to meditate. We have everything we need with a life of leisure and endowment that has come about because of virtuous actions we've created in the past. sometimes with great effort, and this life has, the perennial question, what's the meaning of life? The meaning of a life of leisure and endowment is that we can use it to create the causes for my continued happiness in the future by creating virtuous karma at the very minimum. I can use it to escape from cyclic existence, the unavoidable taking of rebirth again and again due to karma and delusion. I can overcome that. I can achieve nirvana, liberation. Or I can choose it to use this life of leisure and endowment, this auspicious moment, to work toward enlightenment, even perhaps achieve enlightenment this lifetime through the practice of highest yoga tantra. Or at least to create the causes of a continuity of human rebirths in the future when I can continue this path. Why? Because we take cognizance of other living beings, all of them exactly equal to us, even though they appear as insects or animals or other humans of other countries, or in our imagination from Mars or some other galaxy. Knowing there are beings in the hell realms now, in the hungry ghost realm, in the God realms that we don't have direct contact with, all of them having different experiences now, but exactly equal with us in wanting to be happy, to be free of suffering. And all of them having been depthlessly kind to us numberless times in the past, as our mother, for instance, as our friends, as our mentors, as our teachers. Understanding they are, most of them, are without a refuge, without anyone to protect them in cyclic existence. Oh, yeah, they have their samsaric gurus, how to make money, how to go to, how to become a realtor, how to make a buck. But they don't have anyone to protect them from the inevitable sufferings of cyclic existence, like the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Arising the first sense of compassion for them, seeing their plight, seeing the enormity of their suffering. They want to be happy, but they create, in trying to create the causes of happiness, they actually create negative karma. They try to protect their happiness, they get angry and burn up the virtuous karma they have created in the past. Knowing that to be able to lead them out of suffering into stable happiness of liberation or enlightenment requires us to have experience of those states, especially enlightenment, to lead them out of suffering into the state of omniscience, everlasting, blissful happiness. We ourselves must become enlightened, motivated out of that compassion for them, thinking, I must become enlightened in order to lead sentient beings out of samsara. To do so, I must engage in the Bodhisattvas' activities. In particular, of the three types of morality, the morality of accumulating virtuous dharmas, which includes virtuous karma, virtuous accumulation of wisdom, which can be done by listening and contemplating on and meditating on the topics of the discourse today, the Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary on the Chandrakirti's thought in his Madhyamaka Vatara. So think I'm going to participate in the class today, not just to accumulate knowledge to spout at a cocktail party or to influence others, but in order that myself can overcome my faults, become a real authentic person, a bodhisattva, maybe an Arya bodhisattva, what in Yiddish they call a mensch, a real good person. I'm going to do that so that I don't harm others, that I actually benefit them, and work toward the goal of achieving omniscience, the state in which I can effortlessly, spontaneously, and without error lead sentient beings out of suffering into the state of everlasting happiness of enlightenment. I'm going to participate this morning for that goal, to become Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. And then bring your attention back to the present. See if this works. Okay. So I was taught a trick last week there we go, by Ron. Okay, I can see everyone, and I guess you can see me. Okay. So hi, a couple of you have joined. Hi, Paul, Rachel, Violet. I was mentioning Violet, how I heard from someone in Malaysia this week who said he's been watching on YouTube because it's so late in Malaysia. And I said, there's a Singaporean who's watching. So you're there. Hi, Mary, Ellen, Stephen, good to see you again. Jennifer, Snehi. Any questions? Anyone have a question left over from last time, or something from meditation, or something that's come up? No? Okay. So we're going to continue on. Venerable Palmo's here. Where's the other venerable? Maybe she's off this week. Okay. So we ended last time. I'm just going to recapitulate a little bit here. I'll read Lama Tsongkhapa's text. Although they are, this is we finished last time, just about this place. Although they are all equal in being non-conceptual gnosis, that is the various grounds, the Bodhisattva grounds, non-conceptual gnosis. Gnosis means this special kind of wisdom, right? Although they are all equal in being non-conceptual gnosis, the manner in which the grounds, such as the first ground called the joyous, or Tupten calls the perfect joy, the manner in which these grounds are defined as distinct grounds is by means of the following four features. So these features are found in this famous sutra called the Sutra of the 10 Grounds. the Dashabhumika or Dashabhumi Sutra. Ka, like we say, Dashabhumika. Dasha means 10, Bhumi means ground. Ka kind of means, like we say, Madhyamaka, as opposed to Madhyama, the middle way. So Dashabhumika. These 4 features that are distinctive, from which you can distinguish the various grounds. The first distinctive feature arises on the basis of the progressive increment in the number of qualities, such that there exists a 100-fold set of 12 qualities on the first ground. He puts 12 qualities in 100-fold. That's good. So there's 12 particular qualities, and we mentioned them last time. And just mention again here a little bit. Maybe I can read here better. So these are seeing 100 Buddhas in an instant on the first ground, and later on the second ground, seeing 1,000 Buddhas in one instant, perceiving them, maybe seeing them in their Pure Lands, or actually having conversation with them. I remember once at Manjushri Institute, I think I might have told you before, it was like the Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa were there, along with the resident Geshe at the time, Geshe Kelsang Gyatso, who just passed away a couple of weeks ago, I heard. And it was sort of a picnic of the community, and someone had offered a statue of, I think, Manjushri, and the lamas had looked at it and passed it around, and Lama Zopa Rinpoche took the statue in his hand. It was almost as though he was in the presence of, Manjushri. It's said that when you reach a certain stage on the Mahayana path, you can actually perceive the Nirmanakaya, even in statues. So this is kind of like a variant of this first quality, seeing 100 Buddhas in one instant, perceiving them in various ways. The second quality of the 12, receiving the blessings of 100 Buddhas on the first ground, later 1,000 and 100,000 and so forth on the other grounds. Going to 100 Buddha lands, Buddha realms, illuminating 100 lands, Buddha lands, illuminating 100 lands, vibrating 100 worldly realms. What that means is not exactly clear, why one would do that. Living for 100 eons, seeing with true wisdom the past and future of 100 eons. So enormous qualities, even on the first ground, knowing what's happened for 100 eons in the past and in the future. Hundred eons in the future. Entering into and rising from 100 samadhis, meditative stabilizations, in one instant. Opening 100 different doors of the doctrine, elucidating to people, ripening their minds in such a way, ripening 100 sentient beings, emanating 100 versions of one's own body, and then the 12th quality, surrounding each of those 100 bodies with 100 bodhisattvas who are emanations of yourself. So this is the 12 qualities that are had in 100-fold on the first ground, 1,000-fold on the second, and so on. And as explained, I think I explained last time, you can see in Jeffrey Hopkins, he has this enumeration: 100 on the first ground, 1,000 on the second ground, 100,000 on the third, all the way up to, on the 10th ground, a number of emanations equal to the particles of an inexpressible number of numbers of Buddha lands. You can do all of these things. So that's the first distinctive feature, that having these 100 sets on the first ground of these 12 qualities. The second distinctive feature that separates the different bhumis is the ever-increasing enhancement of excellent power. And it mentions that some, such as Jayananda, said that this was in terms of shaking of 100 realms, 1,000 realms, and so on. This ability is included in the increment of number of qualities, but Lama Tsongkhapa says that's not right. This appears to pertain instead to the ever-increasing power of the individual grounds, their power to cleanse the obscurations in the mind. Here he says the pollutants, and their ability to traverse the path. So each of the bhumis has greater ability to eliminate obstacles in the mind. So that's the second distinctive feature. Third pertains to the feature of excellence with respect to the perfections. Or how does Jeffrey Hopkins say? Actually, the Tibetan word is lakpa. When we talk about a special practice of the perfection of generosity on the first ground, a special practice or excellent practice of the perfection of morality on the second ground, and so forth. So each of them have a particular one of the perfections that they are expert in, that they have something surpassing what has had before. And the fourth distinctive feature pertains to the ever-enhancing maturation effects, here, fruitional effects. So you remember when we talk about karma, when you talk about the four results of a karmic action, which is complete, when you have all the limbs of the action, you have an object that you recognize, you have a motivation, can be virtuous or non-virtuous. You do the action, you complete the action. If you have all of these limbs of a karmic action, path of action, it can have four different results, one of which is rebirth, which is called the maturation result or the fruitional result. So it says the fourth distinctive feature pertains to the ever-enhancing fruitional effects or maturation effects. This might mean on the first ground, being born as a Chakravartin king. Here he says a monarch that reigns over the earth. Maybe the Tibetan and the Sanskrit, it means being born as a Chakravartin emperor who rules over the southern continent, which we said you can mean earth. Sometimes in earlier times they thought it meant India and so forth. On the second round, being born as a universal monarch, Chakravartin king that reigns over the four continents and so forth. I mentioned last time, you can read in Jeffrey Hopkins on the third ground, a king ruling the land of 33. You know what the land of 33 is? The heaven of 33? David, you don't know? Good. It's good. I can tell. There's one of the great Buddhist holidays is the descent from Buddha, the descent of Buddha from the heaven of 33, right? His mother, the Buddha's mother, and sometimes I see on some websites, especially the Buddhist websites, they say the descent of Buddha from Toshida. That's descent of Buddha from Toshida was one of the 12 deeds of the Buddha. That's not the famous holiday. The famous holiday is when the Buddha, during the rainy season, had gone to the heaven of 33, where his mother, who had passed away when he was born, had taken rebirth. and he taught her and others there the Abhidharma during the rainy season. So he wasn't around. The other monks were wondering where the Buddha was. And then he descended from that heaven. That's the heaven of 33. So one can be born on the first ground, on the third ground as the king ruling the heaven of 33. On the fourth ground, another heaven above that, the land without combat. On the fifth ground, Toshida, another one of the God realms above that, not the Pure Land Toshida, which is kind of like a suburb of the God realm, and so forth. Okay, so that's where we got last time. Then I think I just read this. We'll talk a little bit more. Thus, with respect to the non-conceptual gnosis of the individual grounds, right? Each of the grounds has moments of meditative equipoise on emptiness, non-conceptual realization of emptiness. And in post-meditation, they don't have, that's not manifest, but they still have that non-conceptual gnosis as potential in their minds. It's unmanifest. So it says, with respect to the non-conceptual gnosis of the individual grounds, because even when they're not in meditation, they still have that non-conceptual wisdom as a potential. Given the great variety of their potency, such as the number of qualities they possess, these grounds are defined as distinct. Okay, even though they all have the same kind of meditative experience of emptiness, there's no difference in their of what they're realizing. They still have these different qualities, and that defines these distinct grounds. Nevertheless, since the qualities in the intervals between meditative equipoise of the individual grounds must also be included as part of these respective grounds. So when you're on the first ground and you're not in meditative equipoise, you're still on the first ground, right? These grounds should not be defined by their meditative equipoise alone. So when you're not in meditative equipoise, you still have the potential of that gnosis of meditative equipoise. It's not manifest. You're in post-meditation. So these grounds should not be defined by their meditative equipoise alone. It is in this manner that the individual grounds must be distinguished, even though these ultimate grounds do not differ whatsoever in their object or aspect of cognition. So what's their ultimate, what do we say here? It isn't, Jeffrey says, it is possible to divide, it is impossible to divide these ultimate grounds by making a differentiation in terms of their object of observation or aspect. That means in meditative equipoise, they are observing emptiness, right? The aspect is that they realize phenomena are empty of inherent existence. So then there's a quotation from the Ten Bhumi Sutra, the 10 Grounds Sutra, the Sutra of the 10 Grounds. I remember when I was translating the Madhyamaka in the mid and late 80s, there was just one translation. You know, if all you have, if you're a beginner, all you have is the Tibetan or the Sanskrit, you know, it's very difficult to understand what it means. So we had one translation. Now there are several. If you go to the site called 84,000, have you heard of that? 84,000.com. I think you write it in numbers. 84,00. If you search on Google, they have a translation of the Dashabhumika. There's a translation that I prefer that will be using when I make quotations from it by a Chinese bhikshu who is not someone I know that I've met personally that I remember. So the 10 Ground Sutra says, just as wise men cannot speak of or see the traces of birds soaring across the sky, the same is true of the grounds of the conqueror's children. Remember what that means, conqueror's children? Galway say is sort of like the Jina Putra, the sons of the conquerors, sons of the Buddha. It's an epithet of the Bodhisattvas. So the same is true of the grounds of the Bodhisattvas. And if one cannot speak of them, how can one hear of them? So Jeffrey's translation is a little bit different. He says, just as the wise cannot express or see the trail of any bird across the sky, so none of the grounds of the conqueror's children can be expressed. Then how can one listen? If no one expresses that, how can they be listened to? Or as this Chinese monk who translated the Dashabhumika said, like the track of a bird through the sky. So he uses the word the track of a bird across the sky. Where is it? Lose it. It is difficult to describe, you might say impossible to describe and difficult to show. You know, when a bird flies through the sky, you can see the bird, but do you see its trail? Maybe if it's, I don't know, maybe some circumstances, if it's cloudy or what is it called, misty, and your parakeet flies, you can see for an instance of agitation of the air, but in the clear sky, when a bird flies, there's no trail left behind, right? And difficult to show. If someone says, oh, they see the trail of the bird, you can't see. In the same manner, the meanings associated with the 10 grounds cannot be entirely fathomed by the mind's intellect. Okay, so that's a quotation from the Dashabhumika. Where do you find the 10 Bhumi Sutra? Anyone know?
There are some links in the chat, Venerable George. It's in the Avatamsaka. It's one of the chapters of the Avatamsaka.
I was going to ask Nadine. Nadine, do you know where the 10 Bhumi Sutra is found?
In the Avatamsaka Sutra.
Yeah, the Avatamsaka. At one point in her life with her partner, used to recite the Avatamsaka daily. I don't know. Did you recite the whole thing daily or just parts of it continuously?
It took me 5 years and I did not recite it daily, but step by step. And it took me 5 years to recite it, the 1,600 pages.
So there are various translations of it, Avatamsaka. Some of one of the famous ones in the West, I think, was it Paul McCleary?
Yeah, Joel Cleary, I think.
Cleary. So I think they called the Flower Ornament Sutra. So that's a take on Avatamsaka that's not shared by other translators. Avatamsaka actually it's called Buddha Avatamsaka, and Avatamsaka can mean vast multitude. So a sutra about the vast multitude of Buddhas. Avatamsaka in some contexts can mean a kind of ornament made of flowers. So that's why that when you've heard it, sometimes people just translate it out of hand as the Flower Ornament Sutra, but it doesn't necessarily have that meaning. It's what the Avatamsaka is one of a group of sutras that are called the Vaipulya Sutras or the Mahavaipulya Sutras. Have you heard of that? Anyone heard of that before? Rachel, have you heard of the Vaipulya Sutras? Violet? Suvash? What does Vaipulya mean? Do you know?
It means something like extensive or expansive.
Right. In Tibetan, we say Shinto Geba. It's very extensive. So when you talk about the various teachings that the Buddha gave, if you studied tenets, some of you were in our tenets class, we talked about at one point, the Buddhist teachings could be encased in 9 categories or 12 categories of things. Maybe some of you remember. Stephen, do you remember that from tenets? No? Let's see if I have here. We'll come a little bit later. So one of the, when you talk about the 12 categories of, that you can categorize all the Buddhist teachings into, one of them was called the Vaipulya, the very extensive things. I ran across this when I was studying Buddhism in India at Delhi University many years ago. One of the books that we had talked about the Vaipulya Sutras, which I'd never heard of before. So some of them, such as the Avatamsaka, the Prajnaparamita Sutras, like the 100,000 verse Prajnaparamita is also called a very extensive or Vaipulya Sutra. And the Ratnakuta, pile of jewels sutra, all of them, in a sense, it seems like also the Avatamsaka is comprised of many chapters, which almost seem, some of them seem to be independent sutras of themselves. So the 10 Bhumi Sutra is found in the Avatamsaka. It's one of the chapters of that. So the commentary continues, although birds soar through the empty skies, the wise of the world cannot describe in words the traces of these birds, nor can they perceive such traces with their minds. Likewise, although the ultimate grounds analogous to the birds soar across the space-like ultimate nature of things, the Arya beings who experience them, the Aryas themselves cannot express how these grounds are traversed exactly the way they experience it. And so those who are listening to it cannot hear it exactly as is seen. This is stated in the sutra passage above. This is reminiscent when we talk about the perfection of wisdom. There's one verse, I think, what was it, composed by Rahula, Masam Jome Sherab Parochin. So the Masam, unimaginable and inexpressible is the perfection of wisdom. Unimaginable, that means you can't imagine it in thought. You know, you can experience it in direct perception, and of course you can imagine it. So you can have thoughts about the perfection of wisdom when you're on the path of preparation, when you have a conceptual understanding of emptiness. That's maybe that's thinkable, right? But what's unthinkable is the direct perception of emptiness, because at that point you no longer have any conceptual thought. When we say unimaginable and inexpressible, so the bodhisattva on these bhumis in their meditative equipoise on emptiness, what they're perceiving is something that they're not imagining. It's unimaginable. They're experiencing it in direct perception, and therefore they can't express it in words. It's inexpressible. So like the traces of the birds here, just as the wise cannot speak of or see, it means, think about the traces of birds in this coursing about the sky. The same is true of the grounds of the conqueror's children. And if one cannot speak of them, how can one hear them? So that's more or less what that's talking about. Okay, any questions? How are we doing? Thinking, okay. Stephen, we missed you last week. You have any questions? You okay? Okay. So now we're going to talk about the individual grounds.
Venerable?
Oh, sorry, Sean. Okay. Someone has a question who started speaking. You first. Who was that?
Sean has a question.
Oh, you were just saying Sean had a question, right?
Yes. Thank you.
Sean.
I mean, are they not telling you that they can't speak about it, but then they're speaking about it?
Okay, so what are they speaking about?
Well, I mean, who knows? I mean,
So what we're talking about is the direct experience of emptiness on the grounds, the non-conceptual gnosis, right? That can't be expressed in words, and it can't be imagined. You can, you can talk about emptiness, as you have to talk about emptiness in order to understand it. You have to read books, you have to listen to, your teacher's explanation about it and so forth. Reading, you're hearing about it, but what you're hearing about is not the actual experience of emptiness, because that's something that's inexpressible. In the meditative equipoise on emptiness, there is no thought process going on. Meditative equipoise, direct meditation on emptiness. On the path of preparation, before the path of seeing, when you don't yet have a direct realization of emptiness, you have a conceptual understanding of emptiness, you can maybe express that, right?
well, so when they're saying that last sentence or second to last sentence, it says, likewise, although the ultimate grounds, so that ultimate grounds just means emptiness. You're not saying that that has any relation to the bodhisattva grounds that were discussed.
Yeah, no, it's talking about the bodhisattva grounds in which one experiences the direct realization of emptiness. Even when one is not in meditative equipoise, one still has the imprint of that, the seed of that in one's mind, not manifest. So it said you still have that wisdom of direct realization of emptiness, even when you're not in meditative equipoise. It's just not manifest. When it's manifest, you're in meditative equipoise. There's no conception, no conceptual thought. So it's not something that you can imagine.
But they were just describing all these qualities of, like, you're going to see hundreds of Buddhas, you're going to.
Yeah, those are conventional qualities, right?
But those were part of the grounds, were they not?
Yeah, they're part of the grounds. But here is it. So just as the wise, he says, wise men, just as wise cannot speak of or perceive the traces of birds flying through the sky. The same is true of the grounds of the conqueror's children. So when it's talking about the grounds here, because in the commentary, Lama Tsong Khapa says, likewise, although the ultimate grounds, that's what he's talking about here, the ultimate grounds of the bodhisattvas, analogous to the birds, fly across the space-like ultimate nature of things, the Aryas themselves cannot express how these grounds are traversed exactly the way they experience it. So this is talking about their experience in meditative equipoise on emptiness. That's what's being referred to here. It's not talking about the other conventional qualities like being able to emanate 100 bodies and so forth. It's talking about what's inexpressible is their experience in meditative equipoise. Okay?
On emptiness.
Yeah, on emptiness, meditative equipoise and direct realization of emptiness. Right. Okay. So now we're going to go into detail on the first ground. So presenting the individual grounds. This is topic 3, the first ground, perfect joy. This is 3 parts, explaining the first 5 grounds, so such as the perfect joy and so forth. Why the first 5? Because the second topic is explaining the 6th ground, which is called the manifest, or sometimes called approaching. So the third subsection here, which will come later, is explaining the remaining 4 grounds, the 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th bhumis. Those 4 grounds. So that's essentially how the text is. Previously, Chandrakirti, gave salutation and some general topics about the 3 qualities of the Bodhisattva, 3 special practices of the Bodhisattvas. Now, when we talk about the Arya grounds, in the Arya Bhumi, starting with the first Bhumi. We first talk about the first 5 Bhumis, then the 6th Bhumi, which is like the major part of the book, and then the 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th Bhumis, and the Buddha ground. So explaining the first 5 grounds, the perfect joy and so forth. The first is 5-fold. So what the first section here, the first ground, perfect joy. The second ground, stainless. The third ground is called luminous. 4th ground is called radiant. And the 5th ground is hard to conquer or hard to overcome. Different ways of translating. Difficult to overcome. So now the first ground, perfect joy or joyous. This is 3 parts. A brief description of the ground, which is the basis. An extensive presentation of the qualities, which are the attributes. And third, a conclusion stating the qualities of the ground. Okay, simple. A brief description of the ground, which is the basis. What do we say here? So brief. So this is found in the Madhyamaka Karikas, the verses, the second 2 lines of verse 4 and the first 2 lines of verse 5. So you can see there where it says 1-4 CD. That means if you talk about the 4th verse of chapter 1, the first Bhumi, it has 4 lines. And this is talking about the second 2 lines there. And 1-5b means the 5th verse, the first 2 lines of that. So the Bodhisattva's mind falls under compassion's sway, yearning to set free every transmigrating being. Through intense dedication with Samantha Bhadra's prayers, he or she abides in perfect joy. This is called the first ground. So Jeffrey's translation, a little bit different. The mind of a child of the conqueror. He actually, the Tibetan, the Sanskrit actually says Jinaputra rather than Bodhisattvas. The mind of a Jinaputra, conqueror's child, overcome with compassion, overpowered with compassion to liberate migrators, dedicated with Samantha Bhadra's aspirations, and abiding in joy is called the first. So these are the various sort of definition of the ground, okay? A bodhisattva on the first ground has seen beings to be devoid of intrinsic existence. It's realized the emptiness of persons, right? And has taken this absence of intrinsic existence to qualify his object of compassion in the manner described earlier. Remember when we talked about the 3 types of compassion? Who would like to make a stab? Don, do you remember the 3 types of compassion that were talked about before?
Compassion for sentient beings, compassion for emptiness of sentient beings, or impermanence of sentient beings, and emptiness of inherent existence of sentient beings. Based on that, we develop compassion.
Yeah, something like that. Okay, so compassion always is observing sentient beings. In the first kind of compassion, it's sentient beings, having compassion, wanting them to be free of suffering, without any kind of qualification of those sentient beings, just mere sentient beings. Compassion for mere sentient beings. Second one is compassion for sentient beings who are qualified. That is, that one has come to realize that those sentient beings are impermanent or empty of self-supporting substantial existence, which is called a gross selflessness of persons, right? So that second kind of compassion within the mind of someone who has realized that sentient beings are impermanent or empty of self-supporting substantial existence, has a greater effect on the mind. You have greater compassion because you realize that sentient beings are impermanent and they don't realize it, subtle impermanence. You have also, it allows you more, I want to say, maturity in your compassion. As you realize they're impermanent and empty of self-supporting substantial existence, you're not swayed by that. You don't have sort of idiot compassion for them. The third kind of compassion is still compassion for sentient beings who are now qualified because you've realized that they are empty of inherent existence. That can that take place before the first ground? Here it says the Bodhisattva on the first ground has seen beings to be devoid of intrinsic existence and has taken this absence of intrinsic existence to qualify his object of compassion in the manner described earlier. That only takes place, that third compassion only takes place on the first ground? What do you think, Mikhail?
No, I think it can come with a conceptual understanding.
Right. Even on the path of accumulation, even before the path of accumulation, you can have that kind of conceptual understanding of emptiness. So what's talked about here is the Bodhisattva on the first ground has directly seen, although the text doesn't say that, it's directly seen beings to be devoid of intrinsic existence and has taken this absence of intrinsic existence, inherent existence, another way of saying, to qualify his object of compassion. That means when the first Bhumi Bodhisattva perceives sentient beings, he or she, that Bodhisattva, knows that the sentient beings are empty of inherent existence. Even if they're not in meditative equipoise, they have that realization. And so those sentient beings, he has greater compassion for them, realizing that those sentient beings don't realize their situation. They think they're inherently existent. It's just like when you see a heroin addict shooting up thinking that they're experiencing real happiness. And you know that that's not real happiness, but you have compassion. Well, you could have compassion. Maybe you have disdain for them. But if you have compassion for them, realizing that they don't realize the situation they're in. Make sense? Mm-hmm. So the Bodhisattva on the first ground has seen beings to be devoid of intrinsic existence and has taken this absence of intrinsic existence to qualify his or her object of compassion in the manner described earlier. So this is talking about the compassion observing the unobservable, or like the mantra of Lama Khapa, Migme Sewe, Ter Chen Chen Reze, Migme Sewe, this non-referential compassion. So that realizes your objects of compassion are devoid of intrinsic existence or inherent existence. And his or her mind falls under great compassion's sway, or is under the control of great compassion, right? The mind has been influenced by great compassion. He says, falls under the sway, yearning to set free every transmigrating being. So in the text, you see some of the text is bold, right? That bold, Tukta mentioned in his preface, I think, indicates that those words that are in bold are the words that are found in the Karika. So the other words that are not bold is kind of like the commentary that Chandrakirti was giving, and Lama Khapa is giving to the root verses, right? So the Bodhisattva on the first ground, their mind falls under compassion sway, and under the influence of compassion, yearning to set free every transmigrating being. On the ground that bears the name perfect joy, this first ground, the Bodhisattva abides through intense dedication of all their virtues with the prayers of Samantha Bhadra, with the Bodhisattva Samantha Bhadra's prayers. So where do you find the prayers of Samantha Bhadra? You know, maybe you've been to some puja where you recite the prayer of Samantha Bhadra. Here it's saying prayers of Samantha Bhadra. When you say there's one famous text called the prayer of Samantha Bhadra. So Samantha Bhadra was a bodhisattva who made these prayers or aspirations. Some people translate it as Samantha Bhadra's vows. That the Sanskrit word, the Tibetan word, usually the Tibetan word is munlam for prayer. Mumba means aspiration, and lam means path. You can say the path of aspiration. Some people translate it as vows because the Sanskrit word also can mean kind of vow. There's statements that are made, may this, I will do this. So in that sense, when you say, I will do this, it's kind of like a vow. And it's when you're just saying, may I do this, it's kind of like an aspiration, right? Have anyone here has not heard of the prayer of Samantha Bhadra? Everyone's heard of that, right? Sean, you're turning your computers so you can, okay, I wasn't sure. Okay. So he abides through intense dedication of all his virtues with the Bodhisattva Samantha Bhadra's prayers. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we get along. This ultimate awakening mind of the Bodhisattva, right? Ultimate awakening mind, ultimate bodhicitta of the Bodhisattva, who thoroughly abides in such non-dual gnosis, which is illustrated by its fruits, such as the number of qualities, is known as the first supramundane mind. What does the prefix supra mean? Snehi, do you know English well enough?
As in not mundane?
Supra means beyond, right?
Beyond.
Supramundane, so beyond the mundane. So the minds of the Bodhisattva on the path of accumulation and path of preparation or connection or cultivation, however you want to translate it, those first two grounds are mundane grounds. Now, this is the first of the supramundane grounds. Not supra, right? Make sense? Any questions? Then the text continues, the countless hundreds of thousands of aspirational prayers made by the Bodhisattva on the first ground, such as the 10 great aspirational prayers mentioned in the 10 Grounds Sutra, are all encompassed in Samantha Bhadra's prayers. So that's why the text mentions Samantha Bhadra's prayers. But what is really being referred to are these 10 great aspirational prayers or vows that the Bodhisattva in the first ground makes. He or she does them countless times, hundreds of thousands of times. So how others have translated that is, let's see, in the translation by the Chinese author of the translation of the Ten Bhumi Sutra. Where is it? Well, let me put it this way. Jeffrey Hopkins translates it as the 10 innumerable, countless, 100,000 prayer petitions planted by the first grounder, such as the 10 great petitions or prayers in the Sutra on the 10 grounds. What are those 10 great prayers? Usually it's not mentioned, but from excising, taking out from the Dashabhumika Sutra, the Sutra of the 10 grounds, here's a little taste. So the first great prayer is like this. The Bodhisattva brings forth a vast, pure, and resolute understanding through which they make a vow to reverently present gifts of every form of offering to all Buddhas without exception. That's the first vow, to make innumerable reverently presented gifts of every form of offering to all the Buddhas without exception. So on the first ground, where one has a special practice of the perfection of generosity, that's especially relevant, right? So the first vow is like that. And then the vow, all of the vows have this second part that says their implementation of this vow is as vast as the Dharma realm, as the realm of Dharma, sort of the Dharma Dhatu, and as extensive as space, as it continues on incessantly until the end of the future time throughout all kalpas. So they make a vow, whatever time it takes, forever I'm going to make offerings of all kinds to all the Buddhas. That's the first vow. Second vow, which is these 10 great vows. The Bodhisattva also makes the great vow or aspiration to take on all the Buddhas turning of the wheel of Dharma, to attend to listening to all of the teachings, vows to take on the realization of all Buddhas' bodhi, all Buddhas' enlightenment, to achieve that, vows to protect the Buddha's teachings, and vows to preserve all the Buddha's Dharma. So the first vow was talking about making offerings. The second is talking about the, taking on, listening to the turning of the wheels, to make the realizations, to protect the Buddha's teachings, and to preserve the Buddha's Dharma. And then they all end with this. The implementation of this vow is as vast as the Dharma realm and as extensive as empty space, as it continues on incessantly until the end of the future time and throughout all kalpas. Second great vow. Mikhail.
Actually, the only Samantha Bhadra prayer I know is the King of Prayers. Is it the same?
Yes. So the prayer Samantha Bhadra, one of its nicknames, you might say, is the King of Prayers. And in Samantha Bhadra's prayer, in the King of Prayers, you will notice these 10 vows can be found in various places in that prayer. But these 10 great vows they're kind of summarized by Samantha Bhadra's prayer, or the King of Prayers, but they are all individual vows that the Bodhisattva makes. So the third one is the Bodhisattva makes a great vow in which they vow that in all worlds, when the Buddhas come forth into the world, the 12 deeds. First, they descend to the world, they come into the world, descend from Toshida heaven, the palace in Toshida, enter the womb, abide in the womb, first take birth, leave behind the home life, achieve realization of the path, right, under the Bodhi tree, proclaim the Dharma, finally enter nirvana. This is summarizing, it's not mentioning each of the 12, but it's talking about the 12 deeds of the Buddha, descent from Toshida, entering into the womb of the mother, abiding there for some time, taking birth, doing the 7 steps and so forth, excelling in the various arts, living the life of a lay prince, having all of these consorts and everything, seeing through the gates of the palace when going out, seeing old age, sickness, death, and an example of someone who's striving to escape, striving for moksha, liberation from cyclic existence, setting out, cutting off his hair, studying with the great teachers of the time on meditation, being dissatisfied with that, setting out on himself 12 years of ascetic practice, then finally achieving enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, then going to Varanasi to teach the first 5 disciples he'd studied with, he'd practiced with, turning the wheel of Dharma, and then passing to parinirvana. Those are the what are called the 12 deeds of the Buddha, right? So this vow is that in all the worlds, when the Buddhas perform these 12 deeds, in other world systems, other Buddhas, in every instance, the Bodhisattva will go forth to visit them, will draw close to them and make offerings to them, will serve them as a leader with their congregations, and will take on the practice of the right Dharma, and will proceed then to simultaneously turn the Dharma wheel in all places. So the first one was talking about generosity, the second one talking about attending to the Buddha's teachings. Now, actually attending, third one, actually, when the Buddhas appear in the world, always being there, being part of the congregation. So say, for instance, conventional example, when the Dalai Lama is giving teachings, to go there, to listen to that, to make offerings, to attend, and to maybe when there's explanations needed, to lead discussion groups, kind of like that, okay? Make sense? Third vow, or that was the third. Fourth vow, the Bodhisattva makes a great vow to explain in accordance with their reality all the Bodhisattva's practices, so vast, so immeasurable, indestructible, unalloyed, in their purity and inclusive of all the paramitas. They vow to explain the purifying cultivation of the grounds, the general characteristics, their specific characteristics, kind of like what Lama Khapa is doing here, right? Their common characteristics, their differentiating characteristics, the characteristics conducing to success in them, what you need to do to succeed in practicing them, and the characteristics that lead to ruin, what to avoid. They also vow to teach these matters to everyone, thus influencing them, thereby to take on these practices and bring forth increasing resolve. So here's especially talking about spreading the Bodhisattva doctrine, fourth vow. Fifth vow, he or she makes a great vow that I will teach all realms of beings in a manner influencing them to enter the Dharma of the Buddha Dharma, influencing them to eternally cut off coursing in any of the destinies of worldly rebirth, and influencing them to become established in the path of cognition of all knowledge. That means omniscience. When we say the knower of all aspects. Some of you are maybe doing Venerable Sangye Kondo's course. His doors, yeah. When we talk about in Abhisamayil Kara, or maybe Stephen also, when you talk about the knowledge of all aspects, here is the cognition of all knowledge, teaching all of them, whether they be possessed of form, whether they be in the formless realm, whether they be possessed of perception. So some beings in the have no perception whatsoever, no gross perception, free of perception or abiding in a state of neither perception or non-perception, whether they be born from eggs, born from the womb, born from moisture and heat, or miraculously born, teaching all of them, no matter how they are connected to the triple world, the three realms, no matter in which of the six destinies of rebirth they abide, the six realms, right? And no matter in which place they have taken birth, teaching all beings possessed of name and form, teaching all such classes of beings as these. So heavy duty, right? That is to say, that is a heavy obligation to take on. The Buddhist sixth vow, the Bodhisattva makes the great vow in which a great vow to directly know and perceive with utterly clear cognition all worlds in their vastness and countless varieties, including the coarse, subtle, the disordered, the inverted, and the upright, knowing all of them, whether in entering them, coursing along with them, or emerging from them, knowing them in their countless many different sorts of variations throughout the 10 directions that are analogous to the net-like curtain of Indra, or we say Indra's net. So this is talking about, developing the ability to enter into all of those realms, to know the form realms, to enter into them, to know their aspects, to know the formless realms, and so forth. Seventh vow, the Bodhisattva makes the great vow to bring about the complete purification of all the measurelessly measurable many Buddha lands, where all lands enter a single land enters all lands, and they are all adorned with many radiant phenomena, wherein they all become filled with immeasurable numbers of wise beings who have left behind all the afflictions and perfected the path of purification, and wherein everywhere enter the vast realms of the Buddhas, accord with the mental dispositions of beings, and thus appear for them in a manner that causes them to be pleased. So I think this is referring to the practice of the Bodhisattvas to create what we call purifying a pure land. One of the Bodhisattvas engage in the perfections, they amass the two collections, and they also purify their own future pure lands. That is, they create the merit to emanate a pure land, as is talked about here, the complete purification of all the immeasurable many Buddha lands. So the next vow, the eighth vow, is the Bodhisattva makes the great vow to unite with all other Bodhisattvas in practices with a single determined aim, doing so in a manner that remains free of enmity, anger, jealousy, and so forth, proceeding in this with the accumulation of all forms of roots of goodness, roots of virtue, engaging with all the Bodhisattvas toward a single objective with universally equal regard, always gathering together with them and never allowing there to develop any mutual entanglement, doing so freely exercised, doing so with a freely exercised ability to manifest all sorts of Buddha bodies, being able to resort to the capacities of their own mind to know all the domains, all the incredible powers and wisdom of all Tathagatas, being able to thus gain realization of the irreversible psychic powers through which one freely roams throughout all worlds, manifesting their physical presence in all the assemblies everywhere, entering into all the stations of rebirth, perfecting the inconceivable great vehicle, the Mahayana, cultivating the practices of the Bodhisattvas. all of them becoming more and more subtle and profound. And then did I skip one there? Oh, I skipped. So. Six, 7, 8, 9, 10. So they make the 10th vow. Oh, the 9th vow makes a great vow in which to take up the irreversible turning of the wheel of Dharma, to course in the Bodhisattva's practices, to cultivate refinement of physical, verbal, and mental karmic actions. You can see echoes of this in the Samantha Bhadra's prayers in various verses. To never neglect the endeavor in these matters, vowing also that if anyone sees him or her, even if only momentarily, then he will be thereby become bound for definite success in the Buddha's Dharma. You know, when Lama Zopa Rinpoche, when he makes dedications, he says, anyone who sees me, hears me, or, you know, comes in contact with me, may it be beneficial for them. This is kind of a reflection of this great vow of the Bodhisattvas. Even if only momentarily, then he will be thereby become bound for definite success in the Buddha's Dharma. The Bodhisattva vows that if anyone hears his voice, even if only momentarily, then he will thereby be bound to gain general wisdom. They vow that if one merely brings forth the thoughts of pure faith, then that person will thereby become bound to eternally cut off from the afflictions. Vows that he will succeed in becoming like a personification of the great king of medicine trees, you know, always being beneficial for sentient beings, that he will become like a personification of the wish-fulfilling jewel, vowing that he will cultivate all of the Bodhisattva's practices. And then the final vow, the 10th vow, he also makes a great vow in which he vows that he will gain realization of the highest samyak sambodhi, you know, the highest enlightenment, perfect enlightenment in all worlds, that they will not abandon even any of those places manifesting within the tip of a hair. They will not abandon any of those places, you know, like some places that you don't go to. They will appear even in all those places manifesting within the tip of a hair, the actions of taking on human rebirth, leaving behind home life, arriving at the Bodhi Mandala. So this talks about the 12 deeds, realizing the right enlightenment, turning the wheel of Dharma, and entering in nirvana. That he will acquire the Buddha's realms of awareness and power of great wisdom, that even in every successive instant, adapting to the minds of every being, the Bodhisattva will manifest for them the realization of Buddhahood and cause them to succeed in achieving quiescent cessation of all the delusions, characterized by identity with nirvana, that employing a single voice in the proclamation of Dharma, they will be able to cause the minds of all beings to become joyful, that even though he manifests the appearance of entering the great nirvana, he will still never cut off coursing in the practices of the Bodhisattvas, that he will reveal the grounds of great wisdom and the establishment of all dharmas, and that in accomplishing this, he will employ his psychic powers, super knowledges, you know, the great cities and so forth, associated with the cognition of all dharmas, the super knowledges associated with the foundations of spiritual power, the super knowledge or city of being able to emanate, and sovereignly masterful transformations that fill up the entire Dharma realm. Sons of the Buddha, the Bodhisattva dwelling on the ground of joyfulness, this first ground, is able to bring forth such great vows, great heroic courage, and great effective action, taking these 10 vow gateways as foremost, he or she brings about the complete fulfillment of 100 myriad of unimaginable great vows. So that it's talking about the, performing these again and again in these 10 vows in, hundreds of thousands, unimaginable numbers of times. This is found in, these 10 vows are found in the Dashabhumika Sutra, which in turn is found in the Avatamsaka Sutra. So that elaboration was done because I've never seen those 10 vows enumerated in other texts, and I thought it was worthwhile. If anyone is interested, I have that as a document. I can send that to you, maybe we'll put it up on the Facebook page just so that you have some reference to that. Richard, you have a comment?
Yes, Venerable, yes, I'd love to get a copy of that. I found them very beautiful. I found the description very beautiful, but more to the point, I think, is that a lot of these vows, especially the earlier ones, seem to have what I guess in the West one would call an evangelical character to them. They're urging, you're vowing to teach, to proselytize, to spread. And yet when I think of, what I've been taught, the idea of going out onto a street corner and proclaiming the Dharma, like a Jehovah's Witness. No. So I kind of discuss this a little bit.
So what it means is that one cultivates sentient beings in a manner appropriate. Say, for instance, when we talk about the 6 perfections, if we don't talk about the 10 perfections, we talk about the 6 perfections. In talking about that, there's often associated the 4 means of assembling disciples. Have you heard of that before, Richard?
I don't think,
So
possibly, but yeah.
One is like speaking pleasantly, just hello, how are you, so forth and so on. Solving people's, being a source for people's problems to be solved. Having become friendly with them, making offerings to them, and so forth. One then, these are called the 4 means of assembling disciples. So, becoming friendly with them, making offerings to them, and then so that they will come to you with their problems and that you can offer some kind of common sense solutions. And then eventually cultivating in that way so that they become susceptible to giving direct teachings. You don't give direct teachings at the beginning. You have to cultivate by being pleasant, creating a karmic connection with them, offering them advice and so forth. And so all of these very heady, incredible, profound vows, the 10 vows that are found in the Ten Bhumi Sutra, that are the basis for the prayers of Samantha Bhadra. The prayer of Samantha Bhadra is also another chapter of the Avatamsaka Sutra. Okay, so they're within the Avatamsaka Sutra. What did I say here? In the Chinese edition, the Dashabhumika is the 26th chapter. In that, that McCleary or Carey's translation, it calls Flower Ornament Sutra. In the Tibetan version, we might call it the what do we call it? The multitude of Buddhas. Buddha Avatamsaka means multitude of Buddhas rather than flower ornament. It's chapter 33. So the
chapter 31, George.
Did I say 33?
I think it should be chapter 31.
31, right. 31 of 45 in the Tibetan. in the Chinese is 26 of the chapter 26 of the Chinese version. So yeah, all of these vows is talking about once one has already done this preliminary work of assembling disciples by the four means of accumulating disciples, of assembling disciples. Okay. Makes sense. Anyone else have a doubt or question? What are we doing? Rachel, you okay? Yeah. Savash? Kristen? Okay. So these countless hundreds of thousands of aspirational prayers. Thupten Jinpa has left off a 10 there of the 10 aspirational prayers made by the Bodhisattvas on the first ground, such as the 10 great aspirational prayers mentioned in the 10 Ground Sutra, which I've just read you, are all encompassed in Samantha Bhadra's prayers. So that's why in the root verses, Chandrakirti just mentioned, Samantha Bhadra's prayers, mentioning rather than all these others. To indicate all aspirational prayers, the root text mentions Samantha Bhadra's prayers, which refer to the vows of good conduct. That's the actual name of the Samantha Bhadra's prayers. We say Bhadra Karya Paridana. So Bhadra means excellent or good. Charya means actions. Paridana means vow or prayer, which is part 4 of the Avatamsaka Sutra. Okay. In particular, the compendium of training. Remember when we talked about the Siksha Samuchaya by Shantideva? He wrote the Bodhisattva Charyavatara, and then he wrote this compendium of trainings where he gave kind of the sources for all of the ideas in his Bodhisattva Charyavatara. And he makes reference to Nagarjuna's Sutra Samuchaya. So he says, in particular, the compendium of trainings by Shantideva describes the 2 stanzas that begin with the words, just as the heroic Manjushri, that's the, when we say Jita Jampa, when you do the, what do you say, Jampa Pao. Oh no, there's a Jampa Pao Jika. Jampa Pao Jita Kempadang. Do you know this verse? When we say dedications, Jampa Pao Jita Kempadang, just as Manjushri, the heroic Manjushri knows, Kuntu Sanpo Deang Dejinte, the Bodhisattva Samantha Bhadra does also. Deda Kungi Jesu Dablobching, because I train to follow them, Gewa Didak Tamche Raptungo. I dedicate my virtues in that same way that they dedicate. This is, you've probably seen this when there are extensive dedications. And then the second one says, so the first one is, I dedicate all these virtues to my training in accordance with the knowledge of the hero Manjushri, and likewise Samantha Bhadra as well, with the dedication so highly praised by the conquerors of the 3 times. To auspicious deeds I dedicate in all ways these roots of virtue. So that's what Lama Tsongkhapa was referring to here. He says, just as the heroic Manjushri is talking about those 2 verses. In particular, the compendium of trainings by Shantideva describes the 2 stanzas that begin with the words, just as the heroic Manjushri, in this prayer as the unexcelled dedication. So when you're thinking about making dedications, to say that prayer, those 2 verses is sort of like the unexcelled, because it refers to all of the Samantha Bhadra's prayers which refers to all of the 10 great vows of the Bodhisattvas. Mintu, you have your hand up for a long time. I'm sorry, I didn't get to you. You there?
Yes, Venerable. I have a quick questions.
Yeah. Mintu is our Thai student who recently, how long were you a monk for?
Vietnamese, not Thai.
How long?
Vietnamese.
What was it?
I am from Vietnam, not from Thailand.
Oh, no, Vietnam. Yeah. How long were you, not Thailand. How long were you a monk?
Oh, I was like for 16 days.
16 days. Okay. Just recently, he sent me photos. Okay. So your question. Also, he's an MIT graduate. That's how we met. Somehow.
Yeah. I think being a monk is fun. You know, I was telling my friend that it's like easier than having a girlfriend. You know, if you don't like being a monk, you can return the robe to the teacher. Everyone is happy. You can't return a girlfriend. You know,
Yeah. Good point. Okay, good. Good advice for you out there. Okay. So what's your question?
I have a question. So I think in the Sutra, in the vow, you're talking about like the means of assembling the disciples and the students. Right. And then in another sutra, the Diamond Sutra, the Buddha said that Bodhisattva shouldn't have like shouldn't think of there's nobody to teach. Therefore, it's really teaching the Bodhisattva teaching.
Say again. I can't enunciate a little better.
In the Diamond Sutra,
the Bhadra Sutra, it says what?
In the Vajrakata Sutra, the Buddha say that there is no student, there's no teaching, there's nobody to teach. You know, right. There's nothing. There's no student, there's no teacher. A Bodhisattva shouldn't think there's someone there to teach. Therefore, it's really called teachings. So, so can you talk about the difference between?
Oh yeah. So in the Vajracharaka Sutra, the Vajrakata Sutra, which the Chinese renowned as, in the Chinese translation, they call it the Diamond Sutra, whereas the word diamond does not occur at all in the Vajracharaka Sutra. So it's one of those interesting kind of cultural things why they called it the Diamond Sutra. In it, it talks about many aspects of emptiness. So you say, for instance, if someone thinks they're a bodhisattva, they're not a bodhisattva. Because in thinking that they're a bodhisattva, there are implicitly in saying that there's implication that they think they're inherently a bodhisattva, that they really exist. That if someone thinks they're teaching, that's an illusion, because teaching does not inherently exist. It's just something that's imputedly existent conventionally. That's the implication in those verses when the Buddha admonishes, you know, if you think you are giving, you know, if someone says, I am giving, that shows that they're not a real bodhisattva, because a real bodhisattva wouldn't have the thought that they are giving inherently. That's the implication of that. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So continuing in the commentary. So this means in Lama Tsong in Chandrakirti's commentary to his root verses, one finds the following statement. Just as one does not assert that a Shravaka, you remember what a Shravaka is? A hearer. Just as one does not assert that a Shravaka on the path of preparation has entered the first fruit of stream entry. Remember when we talked about the four fruits? Was it stream enterer, once returner, non-returner, arhat, right? 4 kinds of Aryas, right? Just as one does not assert that a Shravaka on the path of preparation, they haven't reached the path of seeing yet. You don't say that they have entered the first fruit of stream entry. Similarly, even the greatest of the great stage that engages by means of imagination on the bodhisattva path of preparation. So what does this mean? On the when we talked about the mundane paths, right? The path of accumulation and path of preparation. are mundane paths. The path of seeing, the path of meditation, the 10 bhumis are called supra-mundane paths, right? So another way of calling them is that on the path of accumulation and path of preparation, they're called engaging by imagination. Because one is imagining, one has a conceptual understanding of emptiness. One doesn't have the direct realization of emptiness. Let me see how Jeffrey translates this. He says, Chandrakirti's commentary says that just as the hearers on the path of preparation are not said to be approaching the first fruit of stream enterer, so the great of the great bodhisattvas practicing with belief. So that's talking about in the path of preparation, on the last part of that, we have different levels of that. It can be divided into different levels. So one on the very last part of the path of preparation, who are just about to become first grounders, they are on a level where the mind of enlightenment has not yet been generated. That means the ultimate bodhicitta has not been generated. They're not yet Arya beings. They haven't realized emptiness directly. This too is a ground where the bodhisattva's awakening mind is not yet generated. That's what's quoted from Chandrakirti's commentary, and Lama Tsongkhapa says, what the above citation means is that this is a stage where the ultimate awakening mind, ultimate bodhicitta, has not yet been generated. It doesn't mean that they don't have bodhicitta. Generally speaking, however, as I explained above, it is accepted in this tradition, this Madhyamaka tradition, that even from a stage lower than this, path of preparation, path of accumulation, and so forth, even before that, on the path of preparation and path of accumulation, there are bodhisattvas below this level. The mind of unexcelled awakening has already been generated. When it says unexcelled, that means, the mind that aims for the achievement of highest enlightenment. So bodhicitta and bodhisattvas exist below the path of seeing, on the path of accumulation and path of preparation, but they're not ultimate bodhisattvas. So this is playing on another one of these thorny things that you find in the Vajracetaka, the Vajrakutta Sutra, that Mintu was asking about before, when he's saying bodhisattva. Bodhisattva sometimes refers to someone with conventional bodhicitta on the path of accumulation and path of preparation. Sometimes refers to ultimate bodhisattva on the path, on the first bhumi, and so forth, up to the 10th bhumi. Shantideva's compendium of trainings also establishes, by means of numerous sutra citations, the presence of bodhicitta in ordinary beings, the awakening mind. So those who assert that such beings are not actual, that the only actual bodhisattvas are on the path of seeing, the first bhumi, and so forth, they're engaging in false explanations. Those who assert that such beings are not actual, but only mere facsimiles of bodhisattvas, are engaging in false explanations. They're actual bodhisattvas on the path of accumulation and path of preparation. But what's referred to here on the first bhumi talking about ultimate bodhisattva, someone who is, in the same way we talk about conventional and ultimate bodhicitta. Remember what ultimate bodhicitta means: the realization of emptiness within the mind of someone who has already generated conventional bodhicitta. So they're called, on the first ground and so forth, they're called ultimate bodhisattvas. Make sense? What do you think, Violet? Make sense?
Can you explain again? I'm a bit confused.
Oh,
you.
I'm sorry. I'm glad that you asked for some clarification. So when we talk about bodhisattva, we can talk about someone on the path of accumulation as a bodhisattva. Can we talk about someone before the path of accumulation as a bodhisattva? Someone who's taken the bodhisattva vow? What do you think, Stephen? No, okay, that's the short answer. Elaborate.
No, because they haven't developed uncontrived bodhicitta until the beginning. That's the definition of the beginning of the path of accumulation.
Right. Generally, in the Gelugpa tradition, we say that it's not sufficient simply to have taken the bodhisattva vow to be called a bodhisattva. Some people believe that, some of the other traditions, but generally it's said that the entry into the Mahayana path, the path of accumulation, is the generation of spontaneous or uncontrived bodhicitta. So what that means, spontaneous or uncontrived, that means you don't have to do it with effort. You know, it's spontaneously there. So those are actual bodhisattvas. But when you achieve the path of seeing, you've entered into the first ground, you've realized emptiness directly. At that point, you're given the name of ultimate bodhisattva. You're, you know, sort of someone, it's somehow more qualified. You know, you've had the ignorance, you've had the cataract of ignorance eliminated by the laser surgery, you know, of direct realization of emptiness. So you're called an ultimate bodhisattva. Up till then, you're kind of like an infantile bodhisattva. Okay, making sense? Here one might contend, Lama Tsongkhapa continues, that the compendium of Abhidharma, that's Asanga's text, the Abhidharma Samuccaya, as opposed to the Abhidharma Kosha that his brother Vasubandhu wrote. So the text that Asanga wrote, the compendium of Abhidharma, Abhidharma Samuccaya, describes the stage of entry to the fruit of stream entry as a point when, on the Shravaka path of preparation, a single sitting would lead to the attainment of the first fruition. That means entry into stream enterer. This person, this qualm, someone is saying. So according to this qualm, in Abhidharma Samuccaya by Asanga, which is called the Mahayana Abhidharma, someone who is on the, what does it say here? Who's on the path of preparation, they haven't yet realized emptiness directly, but in the same sitting, same cushion, during that same meditative session, they will enter into direct realization of emptiness. The Abhidharma Samuccaya says that they have entered into the stream entry, but that's not generally accepted. So the analogy you have cited above about the Shravaka path does not hold. This qualm is saying, you know, in this so-called authoritative Abhidharma Samuccaya, it says that even before entering into direct realization of emptiness, if you're on the path of preparation, you haven't realized it directly yet, you still have the conceptual realization, but in that same meditative session, on one cushion, without getting up, you will realize it. According to Abhidharma Samuccaya, you could be called an entry into stream enterer. So Lama Tsongkhapa says, Vasubandhu's treasury of Abhidharma, the Abhidharma Kosha, written by Asanga's brother, Vasubandhu, states that the stage of entry to stream entry is attained on the Arya level, not on the path of preparation, even if you're on one cushion. Whereas the compendium of Abhidharma presents it differently, as cited above. Of these two divergent positions, the master, Chandrakirti, accords with the treasury of Abhidharma. He says that to be called an entry into stream enterer, you have to have realized emptiness. So even though you're still on one cushion on the path of preparation, until that moment on that one cushion, when you realize emptiness, you haven't entered into stream entry. He also accords with what is described in the Compendium of Sutras. Remember the Compendium of Sutras? Who wrote, Carrie, do you remember who wrote the Compendium of Sutras? Sutra Samachaya?
Shantideva?
That's close. That Shantideva wrote the Compendium of Trainings. Nagarjuna wrote this Compendium of Sutras. That's sort of like the basis. After writing Fundamental Wisdom and these other texts, Nagarjuna comprised, quotations from so many Mahayana sutras that he called the Compendium of Sutra that were the basis for understanding the Prasangika path. So he says here, he also accords with what is described, that Chandrakirti accords with what is described in the Compendium of Sutras as follows. So this is quotation or statement. Compared to someone offering on a daily basis heavenly nourishment endowed with 100-fold flavor and heavenly garments to trainees following by way of faith, as numerous as the atoms of the entire universe, compared to them, so someone who is, you make offerings to someone who is following by way of faith. That means they have not yet realized emptiness, okay? They're followers of faith. As numerous, you make offerings on a daily basis of divine food endowed with 100-fold flavor and heavenly divine garments to them daily. As numerous as the atoms in the entire universe, compared to that, a person offering a single meal for a single day to a trainee following by way of dharma, or as Thupten Jinpa says here, by reality, generates incalculable and far greater merit. Again, compared to someone making similar offerings to trainees following by way of reality, as numerous as the followers of faith in the preceding example, another person who offers a single meal for a single day to a person on the 8th stage generates incalculable and far greater merit. So do you remember what the 8th stage was? Who's nodding? I don't want to ask someone who's not nodding. Stephen, what was the 8th stage?
Well, it's counting backwards
Right.
from the 4 attainments, if they're divided into 2, entering and abiding.
Right. So that
I don't know
is
if that answer made sense.
that. So that means someone who has entered into stream enterer, right? That means it's actual Arya. So if you offer to someone who is a follower of faith, all of these things, that's surpassed by offering to someone who is a follower of Dharma, maybe on the path of preparation. But even superior to that is offering to someone who has realized emptiness directly, who is an enterer into stream enterer. Lama Tsongkhapa continues, these 2 types of trainees are clearly on the path of accumulation and path of preparation, and not on the Arya level. So a follower of faith and a follower of Dharma refers to those 2. Let me see if I can read here. So Jeffrey translates this section as, this accords with Nagarjuna's Compendium of Sutra, where it is said that giving one meal for one day to a follower of doctrine, that means a person on the path of preparation, generates immeasurably greater merit than giving 100 divine tastes of food and divine clothing each day for as many eons as there are in sands of the banks of the Ganges to as many followers of faith, which means people on the path of accumulation, as there are particles in the realms of the world. So what does this mean? You know, when we talk about karma, we talk about one of the important factors is the object that you are relating to. Let's say if you're making generosity, if you create generosity to someone who is an ordinary being, you accumulate a certain amount of merit. To someone who is a bodhisattva, you accumulate greater merit. To someone who is a bodhisattva who's realized emptiness, even greater merit. To someone who's a Buddha, even greater merit. You know, we talk about the power of the object. You remember from karma? Rachel, you remember? Venerable Palmo, have you heard this before? Huh? Okay, doesn't matter. So that's what's being talked about here. If you were to give all of these things for great, immense amount of times, divine food of 100 flavors, divine garments, and so forth, to someone who is on the path of accumulation, that accumulates a lot of merit. But if you were to give just one meal for one day, as opposed to for, you know, hundreds of thousands of eons and so forth, one day to someone on the path of preparation, you accumulate much more merit. And compared to that, even if you were to offer the same amount for eons and eons of food and divine clothing to someone on the path of preparation, if you offer just one meal for one day to someone who is on the path of seeing, who's realized emptiness, who is an Arya being, you accumulate vastly more virtuous karma. Jennifer.
Thank you, Venerable George. I had a question. In addition to the power of the object, sometimes they talk about the power in which we see others as a Buddha. Like if we see a guru as a Buddha and we're able to generate that pure view, you know, the merit is that much stronger. So I'm wondering if you could share more about that side of making offerings and generating merit from the side of us viewing others.
Right. So there is a difference. Of course, one can be deluded, right? One, you know, remember there was this Christian fellow, Jim Jones. Many years ago, people thought he was, or other people that might think Christ incarnate or something like that. So just believing someone is something doesn't necessarily mean they are, but still they would accumulate some merit because of that by thinking that they're offering to someone who is divine. But here we're talking about the actual status of the individual. If you, in terms of Buddhism, if you are practicing guru devotion and you are understanding a qualified guru, that means someone who has the qualities, who understands the path, let's say who has the 10 qualities of a Mahayana guru. Do you know what the 10 qualities of a Mahayana guru are? In the Sutra Alamkara, famous verse, Shenendua Shiva Neshiwa. So a guru, a spiritual friend who is subdued, who is disciplined, subdued, and totally subdued. That means that the guru who has practice of Vinaya, understanding of the sutras, and is more subdued by wisdom. Yondan Lakpa Sunje Lungichuk, who has these other qualities of, what do I say, Shenendua, Shinan Eshewa. I recite every day, and when I'm put on the spot, I can't remember, but who has these other qualities of wealth of Dharma, ability to speak, has great compassion, and so forth. These 10 qualities. If the person is a qualified guru and you make offerings to them, the Buddhas actually enter into their bodies, into their mind streams, and you accumulate, if you imagine that they are the Buddha, you accumulate merit of offering to the Buddhas. Whereas in the case of Jim Jones, if they're not qualified, they have all sorts of misconceptions. They're deluding people. The Buddhas are not going to enter into their bodies to bless their to bless them, and so you don't accumulate that same kind of merit. So it has to be someone who is a qualified guru like that, I think, for that to take place. I think Karen also had a question. Karen, did you? You have to unmute.
I did, Venerable George, but it was the same question. So thank you.
Same question. Okay. How are we doing? Paul, do you have any questions, any thoughts, any corrections?
No, never, Venerable George. never any corrections, always questions, but nothing relevant at this point.
Keep on your toes. I like Geshe Tekchok, who eventually became the abbot of Sera, you may know. When he was teaching us at Manjushri Institute, he said, I may make some small mistakes, but I'll never make a whopper. That was how the translator translated. I don't know what Geshe said in Tibetan, but in my case, I will occasionally make some whoppers. So keep on your toes. If I say something that's wrong, point it out, as some people have done. Any other thoughts, questions? How are we doing? No one? Okay, so let's finish there. Who's our director here? Put up the dedication prayers. Is Sheila? Is she still here? Maybe she's disappeared. Oh, there we go. Due to these virtues, may I quickly achieve the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all migrators without exception. When we say Malupa, when it says Droa Chikyang Malupa, not leaving out even one, into that enlightened state. So, when you dedicate your virtues, may I become, as a result of these virtues, may I become enlightened. May I become a Guru Buddha, teaching Buddha, and lead all sentient beings, all migrators, not leaving out the enemies or the uncomfortable and so forth. So in this day and age, when there's so many people that we might feel aggrieved by, politicians or, people with ulterior motives, even going beyond that, thinking that I'm going to become a Buddha to lead them to enlightenment. May the supreme precious bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase ever higher, more and more. And then long life prayer for Lama Zopa, you who uphold Shakyamuni's moral code, serving as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Lama Zopa Khapa, who's an emanation of Manjushri, Manjunath's victorious doctrine, masterfully accomplishing magnificent prayers honoring the three jewels. Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please live long. And to all our spiritual friends, you who are eyes to view all the infinite scriptures, through you become like the eyes for me to see the infinite scriptures, understand them, the supreme gateway for the fortunate ones traveling to liberation, engaging with skillful means, moved by mercy, moved by love, all illuminating spiritual friends, please live a long and stable life. So thank you for your patience. Hope to see you again next week.
So I think we don't have class next Saturday, but
Right.
we do have the White Tara Puja next Sunday. And so for those of you who don't know, Venerable George has very humbly and reluctantly accepted our request, our collective request to offer these long life practices for him so that we may continue to have the merit to receive teachings and that we may continue to receive those teachings without obstacles. So the first one is at 1 o'clock Eastern time, 7 o'clock Central time, White Tower Puja led by an amazing practitioner based in France named Marie Henry. So we hope that you can join us for this and for all the pujas, and in the chat area is the link where you can find out more and register. So thank you.
Okay, so White Tara is often associated with one of the three main long life deities. You know, usually we talk about Ushnisha Vijaya and White Tara and Amitayus, long life deities. There are many other long life practices, but White Tara was the deity that many Tibetan lamas took as their own deity too, because White Tara was not only for long life, but also for wisdom and accumulation of merit. You know, the mantra of White Tara, Tari Tutari Turi, Mama Ayur. Mama means mine, Ayur, that means lifespan. Mama Ayur Puni Jnana. Puni means merit, Jnana means wisdom. Pushtum Kuru Soha, may it become increased. So even reciting, doing that practice for your own increase of wisdom and merit and so forth is very, very useful. So hope to see you again not next week, did I say next week? In 2 weeks, if you want to come to some other practices before then. Hope you have a chance to catch up, study, and read a little bit ahead, and we will continue on. So take care. See you in 2 weeks.
Thank you so much, Venerable George.
Thank you, Venerable George.
Thank you.